All right. So I was working on my podcast series on magic, right? About the ecology of psyche. And
Right.
while I was writing one of the scripts, I was like kind of relaxing and going onto Google and watching an old interview with Quentin Tarantino from 2003, with
Mm.
Charlie Rose. It's a great interview, right?
Mm.
And it's like from 2003 exactly, when he was like coming out with Kill Bill Part 1.
Right. He's a
And
real
so
fuck you guy, isn't he?
yeah, he's amazing. And
He
so
just cuts through every bullshit.
yeah, and so
That's what I
the
like about
the
him.
the conversation with Charlie Rose was about how to write, how to script write.
Mhm.
And so like and just at the beginning, and so Quentin Tarantino tries to explain it, but then Charlie Rose kind of disrupts him and say, okay, but what is it that you have, what other people and other writers don't have? And Quentin Tarantino kind of shrugs and says, oh well, that's just God-given talent. And that's weird that he says that. And then he says something even more weird. It is like, oh no, I'm not really believing in God. But if you ask me, I do believe in God because I believe in God-given talent. And so, and then Charlie Rose says something like, because it's what you do, because that's what you do best. And then Tarantino says, yeah, it comes easy to me. I
Yeah.
don't think about it because it's easy to me because it's not me doing it, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's the first part of the story. So basically, Tarantino speaks about his talent or diamond or his archetype,
Yeah.
right? And then I was thinking about, okay, so what's really happening here? Because it's a conversation. And what happens is that Charlie Rose is an excellent interviewer. It's his diamond in action, right? So
Yeah.
you have actually like two people who are super talented, like Tarantino with his writing and Charlie Rose interviewing him and creating the space so they
Mhm.
can have this conversation, right? And then I was thinking, okay, so actually what happens is there are two people exhibiting their diamond, their talent, whatever it is. And then
Yeah.
I was thinking, okay, maybe we got it all wrong. Maybe the world is not, a machine like thing or like a mechanistic kind of thing, or we're not like going through the stages. What if everything that we can observe, like socially, is just an exhibition of different people with different talents? So you have like a landscape of people inhabiting different areas of talent,
Yeah.
right?
Niches, maybe. Maybe it's like a
Niches, yeah,
niche.
niches of
Yeah.
talent. And so it's like, so you have like different pyramids, and so you could
Mhm.
see like, okay, Tarantino is on the very top of the filmmaking, writing kind of niche, archetypal talent kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Charlie Rose, which inhabits like the top of a completely different pyramid. But then you have like, let's say Joe Rogan, who is like also like a very good interviewer, but inhabits another space because he uses a different medium, and
Mhm.
so it's like everything what you and me, what we are doing in our lives is kind of okay. Actually, we're trying to express ourselves in the most authentic, daimonic kind of way. And then there are things that,
Mhm.
that harkens back to what we were talking before, before
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
started.
Well,
So there are things that are kind of belong to our deep self, to our daemon, and these things happen easily, and then there are these things that don't really fit,
yeah,
you know.
exactly. Yeah, I've been experienced that in real time, in the sense that I found myself trying to fit into a niche or a role that isn't me, you know,
Right.
and seeing how that fails. It's very interesting. Despite, good intentions or any kind, some idealism or whatever, it doesn't work, right? And then so this is what you do. This is what you do is you fail a lot, right? And I think this is like also a niche, right? So it's not that you could find your perfect niche and then you're there and then, I think that my own particular niche is sort of experiment, all the time. And other people's niche is might be much more straight and narrow and much more clear, you know. And I think when I tried to put myself into a straight and narrow type of niche, or I tried to put myself into a sort of fixed archetype of role, or I find myself in the wrong place, I fail, you know.
Right.
But even that is also part of the niche, is the failure, right? So it's the experiment and the fail, and the experiment and the fail. It's like it's like fooling around in your alchemical chamber, like trying to turn lead into gold. You make so many mistakes. But I prefer to be in that experimental mode all the time, which is probably very frustrating for other people, because if they're looking for some kind of consistency, or they're looking for some kind of like clear leadership or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I was trying to compare that to what Tarantino says, and for him,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that's such a clear archetype, you know, he's writing, right?
Yeah.
And he describes it as if it's like automatic writing. So he's not really doing it. He describes it in a way that he's just the guy, jotting down what his characters are saying, and his ego about where these characters should go is often wrong. And so the more he is not attached to where their characters are going, the more clear and the better the dialogue gets.
Yeah.
And he says, and it's easy for him. And that's the point, because, I think I remember that Barth said like that the primary archetype is that with which you can achieve outstanding things effortlessly.
With ease. Sure.
With ease, right?
And also, I think Tarantino he's in touch with like theophany, or I don't know if that's the word, or the chorus of all these different voices.
Right.
So it is like, as a script writer, he's able to inhabit all these different personalities and beings, and all the sub personalities, and through just observation. And if he was too inflexible in his mind, it's the openness,
right,
to hearing all of those different voices, which allows him to very easily, express those different types of archetypes. So yes, it's just like Shakespeare's the same thing. Like Shakespeare put down all of the human archetypes basically, and made himself, annihilated himself, except as the witness of all those archetypes.
Right. Yeah. And so the idea that I had was just, what if social life is just like a landscape of people inhabiting different niches of talent? Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's like, it's like to be like a Beethoven or like a Picasso or Tarantino, whatever. You really have to, have a resonance with that kind of thing and the world. I even don't know how to describe it, but there are people where it's like, no, I personally probably don't have that kind of clear.
Or maybe it's that you do have it. It just hasn't fully exposed itself yet. There's a story about this famous bullfighter. I don't remember his name, in Spain.
Right.
And he was the most timid, afraid mama's boy that there ever was. He was holding on to his mummy's skirt all the time,
right,
because he was so afraid. And he became the greatest bullfighter in all of Spain. But if you looked at him in his state, it would have been the exact opposite of what you would have thought, right? So often the diamond is in gestation, or it's hidden, and it's maybe manifesting itself in its opposite.
No, I completely agree. But why is it? What happens if there suddenly opens up a field of resonance between that diamond and the world? Because you could make the argument that everybody has a diamond and primary. So, but what happens if there's suddenly, this key lock phenomenon where the things just fit, and suddenly out of the timid guy becomes the famous bullfighter, out of the video clerk becomes Tarantino, So what happens if, like that, suddenly there's an unfolding, an opening up?
Well, Tarantino is an interesting example, because what he did was transform kind of the base, the most shitty culture, you could imagine, like the most the B movie or whatever, or the comic book, or let's say, the most base metal, into gold, right? So this is alchemy,
Right.
because he didn't take Mozart, and Shakespeare and turn it into something. He took crappy urban LA, you know, asphalt jungle, garbage culture, the worst of the worst, and turned it into something extremely powerful and compelling.
Right.
So I think that that's an interesting way to think. It's like, instead of trying to get the gold from the gold, you get the gold from the dirt.
Well, yes, that's the saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's the alchemical principle in filth.
Yeah.
And in filth it will be found.
Yeah.
But I think we often try to get the gold from high culture or something like that, or from sophistication, or from sophistry. But often you find it in B
That's
movies
interesting.
and comic books and
Mm.
bad and comedy and whatever.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's interesting that you say that, because like even if you look at somebody like, let's say, Ken Wilber, right?
Mm.
And so he wrote a couple of books, but they were like kind of semi successful. And then he met his wife, and the wife died tragically. And
Yeah.
he wrote this book about Grace and Grit, and that was an absolute smash hit.
Yeah.
And without that book, he wouldn't have been that kind of famous, because everything that he wrote afterwards, and where he tried to, Wilbur 3, 4, 5, where he tried to integrate and all of this, without that book, where he wrestled with, cancer sickness and all the demons that are attached to it, without that, it's like, it's
Yeah.
unthinkable. Mm.
Yeah, and I remember reading in that book, he does speak about the diamond and his struggle with his wife, who was had cancer, and he was trying to write his book the whole time, and he had to give himself up. He had to give up his diamond, and he had all this resentment because he's a guy who was made to write and made to do this, but he had to let that go in order to take care of his sick and dying wife for a while, which was a terrible sacrifice.
Yeah.
In a way, but that terrible sacrifice led perhaps to the next level of his creative process.
Right.
So in a way, there's another rule to the creative process, is that you have to give it up. You have to throw it away. You have to destroy the old. You have to make a. It's also, I always use the example of Cézanne, who burned all his old, his early paintings, his classically paintings, and then came up with an entirely aperspectival, colorful explosion of impressionism, because he had given up his talent and genius. There's sort of a paradox there, because you have to give up your attachment to your own brilliance or your own genius, or you have to give that up,
right,
for that to actually emerge.
Right. No, I was just reading that by accident yesterday from the third Chinese patriarch. It's like the saying that you have to give up your desire for enlightenment unless you, because without that you won't ever get there. You have to stray away from your original intention to achieve anything. And to sacrifice your wish for enlightenment.
Yeah.
But again, it's like,
sure.
again, so
you have to, and also you have to get wounded. You have to suffer in some way, or there's always a period of suffering before, or a period of, just like the, I have the, where is it here? I've been thinking about the nameless arcanum in the tarot. You know this one?
Oh no, what's that? That's death or what?
It's not death, actually. This is Jodie Roski says it's not death. He has a skin and bones, and he's alive. So it's not the death card, it's the nameless arcanum. It's the revolution card. It's he's separating the wheat from the chaff. He's cutting away all that.
Oh,
and
okay.
The lotus comes out of the mud, right? So he's just clearing the ground, right? So I think that's an essential stage, right?
Yeah.
You have to know you have to be able to destroy the old for something new to emerge.
Yeah. I mean, so let's talk about the new, which is emerging, or which might emerge, because from if I take on these lenses, this glasses, right, of diamond being that what wants to emerge, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like I was asking myself, so you look at just look at Western culture for a moment, right? And so it looks to me as if we are all driven by a vision of something. I mean, like, why would you engage in philosophy and spirituality and technology? Why would you engage with it in the first place? What is the driving vision behind philosophy? It's like, okay, no, obviously as a culture we want to go somewhere, right? Why wouldn't we, it's like, why would we do this? Why would we engage in philosophy? And I think there is an image that everybody carries within themselves, carries within themselves, and that is like this. Oh no, we live our daily lives with a superficial array of behaviors and notions and opinions and perspectives, but there is something deeper, right? That wants to come out. And that wants to, the deep self, the highest, as a true self, whatever, by whichever name you choose to call it. And then, but everybody is subjected to this. And if you look at society, it's just everybody is trying to navigate the space between, oh no, we have to live in this mundane, profane world. But there is even like an unconscious maybe sentiment there. Oh no, I have to strive to something true. But what is it? What is it that wants to come out? What is this mixture out of beauty and truth and justice? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I think that there's a way in which we have to understand that, we're born, but we're also being born at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So the diamond is being born. The second being is being born. Otherwise, we just born and or die, and we're another acorn, not a tree,
Yeah.
But there's a second being that wants to be born. And that's the diamond.
Exactly.
So here's the judgment card. You can see this being wants to be. I'm very obsessed with tarot at the moment. There's this weird blue creature coming out of a box.
Yeah.
So there's this unknown being that wants to be born, and so it's born when there's an angel above with a trumpet who's saying, it's announcing the birth of this diamond, right? Or this new being.
Can you put it closer to the camera so I can see it? It was a little bit. Put it closer. Put it closer.
Yeah,
put it closer. I need to see the.
It's hard because when I post the sun. Oh, there we go.
Ah, there we go.
You see, he's coming.
Now I see it. Yeah.
There's a strange blue being coming out of a box.
Yeah.
And blue is the spiritual color, so it's the spiritual being emerging, or the second self, or the divine double.
Yeah.
And it's by I guess the archangel, birth through your own will or effort. It's kind of like it's announced. It happens. It's given to you like Tarantino would said, right? Tarantino would say, what did he say? It's God given, right?
Yeah, the expression was very peculiar.
That's the point. That's the point.
Because he said, he doesn't believe in God, but he does because he believes in God-given talent. And that's such a weird thing to say,
That reminds me of Nick Cave, who says that, I don't believe in God, but except when I'm on the stage, in the state of performance. And then he believes in God, right?
Right.
When he's in that divine moment, right? Of ecstatic expression and communion with everything. Of course he believes in God, it makes total sense, because God is not something you believe in some stupid propositional way. Like, oh, I believe in God. It's not a propositional thing. It's a divine, like a performer who is just, Nina Simone or something, like in her ecstatic, intense, daimonic state, right? That's
so how does that fit together?
That is the divine.
How does it fit together? Lead me through it. You have this card, this judgment, And there comes, out of the trumpet, this blue kind of being, this divine double, let's say, the second being that we have to bring forth. But like, how does that relate to judgment? Like, what's the connection there? Like, why is it judgment?
It's well, it's like in the apocalypse, the revelation. It's judgment in the sense of something being revealed. It's like the last judgment, right? Where the word apocalypse means the revelation, right? Something is uncovered, something is revealed.
Yeah.
So it's judgment in that sense.
But what does it mean in our everyday life? Like, when does this judgment happen so we can bring forth this divine double, let's say, in our daily life?
When we hear the call, that's because he is blowing a trumpet, so we have to hear the call, right? Does that make sense? He's blowing a trumpet, so we hear the call. Like, so Tarantino, he's sitting in his video shop in LA, and then he hears the call to become a filmmaker, and he hears the demonic call, and he goes off, and then he creates his blue monster, or his blue being, or his weird, unusual creation. That's art. I think it's a calling. I think you hear a calling.
Have you ever seen the Book of Eli with Denzel Washington?
No, maybe. I'm not sure, but
I just saw it yesterday. It was an interesting movie because I watched it like years before. I forgot everything about it.
Was he the blind guy?
Exactly. So he has followed the call, the whole movie, and just the revelation that he's blind that comes in the last 5 minutes of the movie. So he memorized the whole book, the Bible, the King James Bible, and has like this ability to, navigate the mundane world and this attacks from all sides with being blind. And so but he hears the call, and so he even says that, oh no, he doesn't navigate by map, he navigates by faith,
Well, isn't that what we do when we meditate? It's not like this stupid idea of mindfulness where we're trying to become like perfect sort of robots, and calm, and it's such a stupid idea, really, how people think of meditation. But it's more like you're sitting very still and listening to the call.
Yeah.
And what calls you from beyond yourself and within yourself at the same time.
Yeah. And it is like, yeah.
Well, I was just saying that if people presented meditation in that way, maybe people would want to actually do it. But if you present meditation as a self-help therapy, it's a total uninterest. I mean, who would want to do that?
I mean, there's like because you like tarot and this stuff at the moment, because if you have this Hermetic ritual about invoking the diamond and invoking let's say the holy guardian angel, as it is called in Christian, and so what you have is like this ritual which is called Liber Samek, right? And this is like a extreme long, elaborate ritual with all these artsy kind of made up words, Kabbalistic words. They're not really made up. It's like, but they don't make any sense on first glance. You have to know the Kabbalistic kind of notions and ideas, the numbers, to understand what's going on there. But, in effect, it's like, oh no, you're overwhelming the mind so much with this ritual that it kind of absolutely is through its complexities, that kind of overburdened with this, so that the effect is that you can actually start to hear that calling from the holy guardian angel, from the diamonds, but the ritual is just made up in the way that it silences through its complexity the mind and the ego, right?
Yeah.
And then you can hear like this
overcoming through splendor. This is what they call it in the Vajrayana, overcoming through splendor.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same in the Vajrayana tradition. You have these feast practices, right? And they're super sensual, sort of filled with high intensity sensuality and mantras and sounds which are transrational, and images and this is like you immerse yourself in that in that bath,
Yeah.
of sensual imagery and unusual, let's say, sounds and images, right? Which are related not to a kind of propositional rational mind. They're related to a feeling, tone, sensation, what they call in rasa in the Hindu tradition. And so you immerse yourself in that, and you immerse yourself in what we call deity phenomenon. Uh-huh. And then you come out of that, right? So it's this immersion in that, and then you're more in tune with I would, if we're using the word daemon, you're more in tune with that divine
You know
voice.
what's interesting about that? What you just said?
Mm-hmm.
That this is like a complete reframing of what spirituality is about. Because if you think it like that, so you have like, on one side, you have like kind of naturals, like people that are kind of through their education or like their upbringing, suddenly in that position that they can fully expose and fully express their diamond, like Picasso or let's say Tarantino, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the spiritual practices that kind of want to get to that point on purpose.
Right. Conscious, yeah.
Yeah, and so you have like the naturals, and you have like the guys that through spirituality like kind of want to harness that power, and that reframes what spirituality is kind of about, at least partly.
How does it reframe it? I'm not.
Because normally,
I guess it reframes like conventional Protestant spirituality or something, which definitely it reframes that, because
right,
it's all about sensuality. It's not about self-denial or any Puritan kind of morality code,
right,
for sure.
exactly.
It's, well, my own teacher would say it's about passion and aggression, because that's what life is. Life is just passions and aggressions, and either you can be swayed by those unconsciously, you can become sutric and you can go off in the mountain and deny that, and in every kind of way, like you'll through, you could become a monk, and you could sit zen and just empty yourself of all that and deny all the passions and stuff, or you could become an artist. So I think the ultimate, let's say, religious practice or religious spirituality is sort of a collective art form, right? It's kind of this kind of ritual stuff it's collective art. There's individual artists, yes, and they have some God-given talent, but then there's the collective art, So I think if you combine the two, it would be much more powerful, right?
Yeah.
Because the individual artist tends to become solipsistic, after a while, and a caricature of himself, and gets tripped up by his ego. And artists are very strong usually in one period of their career, and then the rest of the time the diamond leaves, right? And they become a caricature of themselves. But
if
you immerse yourself constantly in these practices, the diamond stays. It doesn't get killed. I think as you go older, your job is to keep that sort of flame burning.
I mean, it's like it's beautiful what you say, because I completely agree. This is like what Tarantino says. He does 10 movies and that's it, because he doesn't want to, be viewed as somebody whose daemon has left him, And then on the other side, you have like people like, let's say, Louis C.K., who have like a completely different diamond, but are then, as being comedians, have like this way of, pronouncing or explaining situations of life that are sometimes way more profound than anything any guru could say. It's like, that's oh no, that's so much more potent. And so he was like, I was watching this interview here that he did and with Theo Von, and I think they talked about dogs, because and so Louis C.K. was like, oh no, it's like, as a dog, you just let yourself shower with love. That's your existence. And to learn that as life, that life is showering you with love. It is the way he explains it was like, oh yeah, no, that's pretty profound, because I can understand what you say about
that's
the dog.
Bhakti yoga there in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, that's
And
very
so,
interesting. That's great what you say about comedians. I totally agree. And in fact, the spiritual teachers who I've had, who I thought were the most interesting, also were also quite capable of stand-up comedy.
right,
They were very funny. I've met a couple very good teachers, I think, and I've seen them do things, and I've had the thought, oh, this guy could be a stand-up comedian or a great actor.
right,
Right? They're not doling out platitudes of Protestant behavior behavior demands.
right.
They're deeply passionate and hilarious, and they can. I think the great crazy wisdom teachers can do all modes, of being, right. They can
Yeah,
be a comedian. They can be they can be quiet, very quiet. They can be ecstatic. They can be still. They can be all. So that's that. The enlightenment state is this theophany, right? It's this.
yeah,
I think it's this total expression. It's not a monological mode of being.
yeah,
And I think a lot of the spiritual teachers in the Protestant West tend to become sort of stiff and boring. And in the Advaita and Zen world, they tend to be sort of like, it becomes a guru cult thing because it's so bloody boring, and people become dependent, and you get spoon fed the same shit
yeah.
over and over again, and it's kind of
Yeah,
gross.
that's what I like what you said. It's like because
Yeah.
it's like it's a redefinition of what postmodern spirituality is. Because it's like, oh no, you have that Protestant kind of approach to spirituality, which is all about love and community and empathy and
Yeah.
non-violence, and so on. You think, oh no, that's maybe quarter of the equation, because then there is this aspect of passion and aggression and will and striving and
Yeah.
pain and destruction and all of this that you have to kind of embrace. And the diamond, it's like, no, it's like the goal of the teacher must be to release the daimonic student, right? Not to keep him, but to release him, because he has attained his diamond and can now go into the world. And so the better the guru is, the shorter the time is where the student is with him.
Yeah, and he would also do what Gurdjieff did, what it was like he would be destroying the communities he built all the time.
Exactly.
And he would be kicking out his students all the time and saying, go and figure it out. And I mean, that's how they do it. That's how you would do it traditionally. Like, you meet the teacher would kick you out for 20 years and say, do this practice and figure it out, and then come back and talk to me when you figured it out. It wouldn't be this childlike dependency and sycophantic guru worship that is
Right.
sort of promoted because people are childish and they want mommy and daddy,
Right.
So that's, yeah. So that's.
But again, I think that, if you are at that stage, you are the goal, at least the first goal of spirituality is that you live your diamond. And that, because if you look at the Greeks and the classics, it's like, oh no, God gives you these talents so that you can use these talents to reach God, right?
Yeah.
So that's like the double pathway. And so it's like, oh no, the teacher has to release the student enacts his diamond in a way that the last path towards enlightenment he can achieve through the diamond.
Yeah.
That's the core idea.
Yeah,
Right?
and every kind of path is extraordinarily unique, right?
Right, exactly.
So you can't put it into a factory model. You can't say do these practices and then you'll get enlightenment, right? There's no factory model. It's very, very everybody is so honest in such a different kind of being. So everybody needs something slightly different. So again, I think that might be the problem with a lot of spiritual movements and cults is they develop a set of standardized practices that everybody is supposed to do, and then they put people through these practices like a kind of a meat factory, and then they're supposed to come out the other end enlightened, but it doesn't work that way.
No.
It works. It's a much more mysterious and windy path, and
Yeah, and then
strange
I think it's a
concept.
setup because, like, I would presume that, let's say, a good chunk of true spiritual teachers, enact their daimon. I would say, and then they try to model this and create an environment so the same daimon that he has might emerge through his way for them, but that is not how it works. That's what you're saying. It's like, no, it will emerge, but in a complete different way.
In an absolutely different way. So you can't. So this is when Christ says, "Imitate Christ." He doesn't mean to wear long, have long hair and wear Birkenstocks and try to walk on water and and be, It means that it means to imitate to find your own diamond, right? To find your own intensity and your own sort of, Christ-like, non-compromising intensity.
Right.
Which wouldn't look anything like what the historical Jesus or anybody else did. It would look like something totally different.
Yeah. Think for yourself and question authority. No, that's what Tim Leary said in this regard.
Well, and question yourself too. Also, just don't just question authority. Question your own authority. Of your own self.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's a bit adolescent. So it's like, question everything about yourself and your own motivation.
Oh no, but I don't think he meant it like this.
No, I know. But people did take it that way, and that's why, and also dosing people with a whole population with acid, Kool-Aid acid, wasn't the most skillful means spiritual practice ever, but
But you didn't. The point is that you didn't know that at that time, and at that time, it was his diamond to, let's say, oh no, let's try it out. Let's break down down the ego for something else to emerge. Now it's like, oh no, I mean, like John C. Lilly jerked off dolphins, to find out what's, like, what can we do with this? It's the
dolphins are rapists. People like to spiritualize dolphins, but they gang rape other dolphins, and sometimes they gang rape human beings too.
It's,
dolphins are gang. Don't worship dolphins, everybody.
Yeah, dolphins. Yeah, no, but I mean, what I want to say that all wild sorts of shit, back then, and so it's like from the back seat now, it's like kind of all right. So maybe that.
Oh yeah, it's a backseat view. That's true.
But from their point of view, it was like, oh no, we have to try this.
Yeah, sure.
Makes complete sense,
Sure. Yeah, because you can you become judgmental in retrospect, because that would be a stupid thing to do today, obviously. But that's true, I suppose.
Yeah, because also there's a historical perspective. Historically, the shamans would take mushrooms, whatever, to open their mind and to let the spirit and the daimon in. So that was what historically happening. So the idea to manufacture that for the whole society, that's not so far out. It's just like,
Yeah. Well, you could argue whether he was irresponsible or not, Timothy Leary, but he did what he did, and the historical consequences were enormous, obviously, and
So
now the internet is LSD, as he said. He was the guy who said that. I think he said.
Let's stop there for a second, because that's interesting. Because so let's assume that he did it because his daimon obliged him to do this. No, not obliged. That's not the word. Like, that was his daimon showing the world you could do this, right? But now we're judging this. So basically, what daimons are doing are steering the course of human history in that way. Because you could make the argument that history is shaped by those weird decisions, with people with talent doing something, which consequences you are not able to see at that moment, right?
Yes, yes, of course, yeah.
So
but the problem would be, like, if you would rationalize, and you would have. It's hard to know what your daimon is, right? Sure. It's hard to say this is the daimon, right? This is the divine acting through me. If you start to make those claims, it's probably not true, right? You know what I mean? You're probably subject to inflation, ego inflation, and that's where it kind of gets dangerous. What?
That's not what I'm talking. I'm not talking about some guy saying, "This is my diamond." Because that's bullshit. What I'm talking about, if you look at major events from the back seat, like, you know, Timothy Leary and his thing.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, oh no, that was a diamond. Then you could look at Tarantino, that's diamond. And so it's like, what happens is the shift in society that happens through diamond.
Yeah, sure.
And not
So
people
you're
saying,
talking
oh, no,
about the
that's
shift rather than any ethical concerns or
right, exactly. And
it's
so
not a
you're
question
saying,
of good or evil, you know,
right,
when it's a movement in culture.
good and evil,
Even though,
Nietzsche.
yeah, it's
That
beyond
his
good and evil.
diamond that was so big that he steered the whole philosophy in the last 100 years in a substantial manner.
Yeah,
He couldn't have
but
known that.
sometimes the diamond is a demon, you know. That's
Right.
the thing, right? I think Nietzsche's daemon was very mixed, but again, I am looking back retrospectively at a series of events that are, you know, just happened and occurred because they had to happen, or because they did happen, not because they had to happen in any fatalistic sense, but.
I mean, that's also like a very Christian thing that we're doing. Oh, there's a war happening in heaven and between heaven and hell, you know, between the demons and the diamonds. You know, it's like it's a weird no, you know what I'm saying? It's a weird thing to argue like this, but in a way it's true, because if you're not listening to the call, then all these things appear as demons, you know, it's like what Meister Eckhart says, you know, angels that you try to liberate you, but, you know, appear as demons because you don't listen to it.
Yeah, sure.
And so,
yeah. But then there's also the Rudra, which means egohood, where you become the ultimate kind of ego demon, right? How do we distinguish between the Rudra, you know, who's the ultimate ego monster?
Yeah.
And the like Hitler had a daemon too, right? Didn't he? I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah,
maybe
sure he did.
Maybe for fast lanes, I don't know.
He had a kind of a
For
diamond.
Autobahn.
Yes. I don't know. Okay, now I'm getting into Hitler. It's like when you say Hitler, the argument's all over.
I noticed that he lurked in the background. It's like, can I come in this conversation? Yeah, I noticed him too. It's like, no, Hitler, get out of this conversation.
Yeah, well, Hitler has replaced, like, I bet before Hitler, everyone would talk about Satan or Lucifer or something like that, right?
Right.
That was the archetype of evil, right? It was a mythological character.
Yeah.
It's interesting that our archetype for evil is no longer a mythological character; it's a historical character.
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting. Like, what does that mean? Like, okay, it's an actual person, because we don't talk about Satan and Lucifer anymore, except, you know, in very weird esoteric circles or in, you know, in fundamentalist Christianity. But so what do we so now we talk about Hitler, you know. Hitler is the.
It's interesting that Bill Burr talks about this, you know. He talks like, why is it that Hitler became, you know, the symbol of evil and is like in the top dog in the Hall of Fame of evil, when you have like people like Stalin and Mao that killed dozens of and so like why is it that Hitler is like this kind of
maybe it's because Hitler has a supernatural feel to it, so he's, you know, he's kind of, there's something supernatural about Hitler. He doesn't seem human. He's because I guess, like, the Nazis had these big sort of firework displays. They created this whole pagan aesthetic, right? So I think it's the aesthetic of Hitler which touches the archetype so deeply. Right? I think it's the aesthetic. So he does sort of replace Satan in terms of aesthetics. Whereas the other ones weren't as good as aesthetics. That's why symbolism is so fucking important, right? Because it's all aesthetics. It's like, we have to understand what symbols mean, and the fact that the swastika was a reverse wheel, and you know, all these kind of things you know, are in operation, right, in our world, and we don't really know it, or we don't get it, or we don't see it, because we're not used to thinking in symbolic terms or aesthetic terms.
Yeah, maybe it's also because it's so close to, let's say, our culture, because it's like Leni the blueprint of what Leni Riefenstahl did. We watch that every fucking day on the computer and television. It's like, that's the aesthetic. You know, it's like the way you shoot movies, you frame pictures, you use symbols. That's like her aesthetic. It's like, you can't think any Hollywood movie without what they did, what Leni Riefenstahl did.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it's so close to home that we have to mythologize it, because you know what I'm saying? It's too close. It's like although
it's also the most convenient scapegoat of all time, right?
Yeah.
It's just the most convenient, so we don't have to look at our own evil or our own demons, our own shadow, our own potential for that, because we have this ready-made go-to scapegoat figure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if that's the correct description.
The person who represents all the evils of the world in one being. So
oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, like, look at Riefenstahl. She had like an incredible talent for filming that was like unheard of, and so she, with that kind of way of setting up cameras and filming stuff and scripts, and so that she changed the course of history. And that's like
she had a daemon too, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean, and that's so interesting. I mean, she was like a Nazi sympathant, I think, but the way she did it, man, you can't watch the Avengers without watching Leni Riefenstahl. That's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
Or I
bet there's been studies about Nazi aesthetic in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess the Nazi aesthetic is pure propaganda, and much of Hollywood today is it's not pure propaganda promoting killing Jews or anything, but it's pure propaganda promoting woke, which is not so bad compared to other things.
Have you ever watched The Triumph of the Will?
Parts of it, of course, but
I like a month ago I watched the whole thing. It's I mean, it's from a viewpoint of filmmaking, it's incredible because it looks absolutely modern, when the camera pans down from a crane, over Hitler's shoulder, over these thousands of people. That's Avengers, man. That's a classical Avengers movie.
Interesting. Well, I remember watching some film with my wife, which was colorized. They colorized, and they showed Hitler's early career.
Yeah.
And I saw why he was so compelling in those images when he looked more ordinary and he was just sort of a charismatic, ordinary guy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because normally we see him as like a demon or a caricature, or foaming at the mouth, and just this completely sadistic, bizarre person. But when he came into power, he my wife was saying he kind of he was reassuring to people in some kind of way, like he was more ordered. He reassured people. Which is terrifying to say that the banality of evil is really like this ordinary person who's reassuring everybody that is being okay, and that is that image is hiding something extremely dark.
Right. I mean, it's like Chamberlain and Roosevelt. They both loved him like in the early 30s, because of his charisma. And so because there was no television, that's a famous story. So you had like these beer houses in Germany, right? These Brauhauses. Yeah. And so he would come there like, I don't know, Friday or Thursday and would deliver this 3-4 hour long speeches. And there was like these buildings were packed of people, and so he would get into this frenzy and in this fugue state, and then he was like, and at the end of these 3-4 hours, the people were crying and cheering and were completely out of there because he had like this ability to just grab their attention and bring them in a form of that was like
so he's like a holy roller preacher or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And so
there was a little GIF that I saw on internet where he was at the Olympics. Hitler was at the Olympics and he was like going like this back and forth, like sitting there watching the Olympics. It was like he's like somebody with like Tourette's syndrome or something like that. He was just possessed by pure monstrosity, but it's really wild.
It's weird how that works. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is indeed. The sort of this possession that people get under the study of hypnosis is very interesting because people were always being hypnotized by something. We're always falling into states of hypnosis, I think.
Yeah.
Werner Herzog made
Yeah.
a movie where everybody in the film was hypnotized, and he filmed the people being hypnotized. They're very weird.
Yeah.
He learned how to hypnotize people, and then he filmed everybody in doing strange things under hypnosis. But the commentary is that is all of us.
Sure. Yeah, that's for sure. But I mean, yeah. I was just thinking about, when you talked about hypnosis and like these weird trance states, because it's like I was thinking about, okay, then there were the Americans and the physicists with the atom bomb, which had obviously their kind of genius enacting. Otto Hahn and Wolfgang Pauli and all these kind of people, and then they would get themselves into states of trance. It's like to come up with new ideas and stuff.
Yeah. I think that we're kind of numb to all that, right? Because the culture, we're always in a sort of internet state of trance these days. I wonder if that is increasing our trend, or if that is, making it less easy for us to go into those sort of natural states of trance.
Yeah.
That we need to go into to get new information, because we have all this sort of information flowing into us all the time. So
yeah,
I think you have to kind of like empty yourself to get into that state, I think that is an interesting topic.
I think to do it proper, you still have to dance, you still have to fuck, you still have to meditate.
Yeah.
To get into, but because that's what it is. It's like to close it down, and that's to close it up, and to come back to Tarantino, because I think one of the hallmarks of being to enact a daimon is to be in a form of trance and flow.
Yeah.
Because it's like that's because we're talking about the social dimension. I think the individual dimension is that you get rid of the ego through a state of flow and trance, and have because flow means a unity with you and the environment, that niche that we're talking about. And you were in a kind of flow, because that's when you see like these people with these extraordinary capabilities, like in sports or whatever. No, they are in a form of trance. So when you see Picasso like painting, that's trance, that's flow, that's
I talked to somebody who went to lunch with Tom Waits one time. Tom Waits was like, again, he was like in this kind of sitting at lunch like this, didn't stop moving. He was obviously in this kind of like manic state all the time. But I think I was trying to think, what is that? What is he doing? And I thought, what he's doing is he's getting stuff out of his body, because everything gets stuck, right? And you're in the consciousness, your consciousness gets very stuck, and so he's just sort of he's pulling things out of the unconscious and out of his body, and he's shaking it all away. I think that this kind of shaking and stuff, and is that you see people doing in even in like different evangelical communities, where you're shaking, you're like getting the daemon out. Maybe where
shaking
we have to
all
do
the
that.
time.
It's like the Taylor Swift song, "Shake It Up, Shake It." What is it? Shake it down, shake it up. Shake it.
Oh my God!
Because you got to shake it, basically. You got to shake it out, because the haters are going to hate.
Oh my goodness!
The haters are going to hate, so you got to shake it. And the fakers are going to fake, and the haters are going to hate, so shake it up, shake it up.
Shout out to Taylor Swift, huh?
Taylor Swift, yes. I was listening to that song with my
All right.
You can find profound things even in Taylor Swift.
Yeah, no, I for sure. I mean, I found, I know.
You find her profound, do you? I mean, you find her profound in